Join as we're talking through the intro here. Thank you everyone for joining the first session of the Lean Into the Community webinar series. We started with a survey of different businesses within the Connecticut community to talk about what it is that's impacting their businesses right now due to the COVID-19 crisis that we find ourselves in. The top 3 responses were actually around finances and financial hardships and loss of revenue. So because of that, we decided to start the series talking about the different financial options that are available to business owners at this time. And I'll get to our panelists today, but I just wanted to step back a bit and talk around, a lot of people call this the new normal. It's unprecedented times, that type of thing. And I think, a lot of us don't quite realize what the history books might say about this time. But, if you look at the global impacts of what's happening right now with this pandemic and the fact that we're all, as a community, deciding to do things like social distancing, stay at home, that type of thing, it is really quite remarkable to think about that much larger global community and what we've been doing to try to, really sustain life and make sure that we don't have a large loss of life. So, it's an interesting time to think about it globally. And at the same time, what I really wanted to do was to try to help my smaller business community. So I'll just go to the next slide here. And I'm your host of the webinar series. My name is Wendy Austin. I joined the Midstate Chamber of Commerce in February. Didn't get a lot of chance to do a lot of networking yet, but I am a digital marketer, and so I knew that I could help Rosanne out with kind of getting a lot of this communication out, as well as try to see if we can bring expert panelists in to talk to everyone around issues that they have. And to that point, I'll get to our expert panelists. Today we have Rosanne Ford, the president of Midstate Chamber of Commerce, and Julio Casiano, to talk about the programs that are available from the SBA. And so, Rosanne, if you can talk through what it is that Midstate is able to do for everyone and some of the things that you've seen on the state level.
Certainly. Thank you, Wendy. And I certainly just want to thank you again, Wendy, for putting this series together, coming up with the survey and working to get that out. We really appreciate what you're doing because it is so important for us as the Chamber of Commerce to continue to be that connector for our members and business community. And while we are unable to do that personally, we are utilizing certainly our e-minders, our website, social media to get this important information out. I will keep my comments brief because, Julio has a lot of information to share, and I really want to thank Julio for being with us. He is a great resource, very knowledgeable, and we've had the pleasure of working with Julio and his team in the past on a number of different small business workshops. But just a quick highlight of what we have been doing here at the Midstate Chamber. We created a resource page that is on our website. So if you go to the Chamber website, midstatechamber.com, and click on the News tab, you will see the COVID-19 resource page for businesses. We are updating that regularly because a lot of things are changing very quickly. So please continue to look at that. We're sending out updates and notices again via the website, social media, and e-minders. And I've been on countless webinars and calls with different state, local, and federal officials because there are many different programs out there. Today Julio is going to focus on the federal programs that are being offered through the SBA are Small Business Administration, but on top of that, there are state programs as well. Many of you heard about the Bridge program that the state of Connecticut DECD put together very quickly, which was a great effort. But again, the demand was so high, the application process was, I think, open for less than a week, and they had to cut it off. So those businesses that were able to get applications in, I did learn from a call yesterday that they're in the next phase for that, and after the application, evaluating all of those applications, I think they received 5,000 requests in that first week. They hope to be getting funding out by the end of March. By the end of this month. Sorry about that. There's also a program through HEDCO, which is the Hartford Economic Development Corporation, specifically for women and minority-owned businesses. So we anticipate hearing more on that as well. But for additional information, continue to check, and in terms of state programs, continue to check the Midstate Chamber site. There is a hotline that I know Gwen has on a slide that you'll see at the end, a hotline number for Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, along with their website as well, again, which we have the link for on our site. And then one last note, just beware of scams. This time when crises do come up, the scammers come out. So please beware, in your personal life, but especially in business as well. Go to credible sources for your information. Don't believe everything you're seeing on Facebook. So check the Midstate Chamber site, check the state sites, and also, avoid entities that are offering those high interest and payday type loans, because that may certainly get you more into debt. So with that being said, I will now gladly turn it back over to Wendy and Julio.
Yes, and as Julio is talking, if anyone has any questions, if you're used to these types of formats, you can type your question into the question box that should be on the right-hand side of your screen, and or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. And with that, Julio, take it away.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, chamber members, small businesses, and the community at large. Rosanne and I go back a number of years in terms of holding a number of small business seminars and workshops there in Meriden, trying to really educate small business to be prepared. And guess what? That is needed more now than ever. And then let me just give you an update as to what's happened and how we got here. Back around the 15th of March, the governor had asked for the disaster declaration here in Connecticut, for which Connecticut was the third state in the nation to actually be declared for assistance from the federal government through the Small Business Administration. And then right after that, we basically began to put up our programs here for disaster assistance. What happened during the first 10 days since the 15th, most of the lending or the programs that were up and running were directly through SBA's disaster programs, which the word basically that was being used was economic injury disaster loans or EIDL loans. And that program is still there. It's still up and running. So there are a number of programs that through SBA are up and running that really go back to the 15th when the disasters were declared here in Connecticut. An interesting program that's still in the SBA website is this economic injury disaster loan advance, which you as a small business can apply for up to $10,000. And so that program is still there. you would just have to go to sba.gov/disaster and look for the Advanced Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. So please take advantage of that. I know most of you are kind of confused as to what is available. Well, I'm trying to hopefully guide you in terms of what's happened since the 15th. So on the 15th, as I had mentioned, the economic injury disaster loans were up and running, and you had to go directly onto the SBA's website to do that. About 10 days later, we had the advanced economic injury disaster loan, which would allow you to get an advance of up to $10,000, and that's still in the SBA.gov website. Then moving forward, everyone started listening to the airwaves and hearing about this program that's being pushed through Congress, which included the president and the Senate. And the lingo for that program came out to be the Payroll Protection Program. Everyone knows it in terms of the acronyms PPP. So when people ask about the PPP, they're really talking about this third program that's in the SBA's purview that was just launched last Friday. That was when the Treasury and the President and SBA had indicated that that program would be up and running, which was last Friday.
Julio, I think we just lost your audio. Hello, Julio?
I can still hear you, Julio, but it does, Wendy, it does appear we have lost Julio, hopefully only temporarily.
Okay. And when he comes back, there was a question that was asked that I'll be sure gets answered as well. So now might be a good time while we're waiting for him to come back onto the call to put your questions into the question box.
Yes, and if there's anything also, chamber related, I would be glad to answer anything I might be able to answer.
Okay.
Also, I know Wendy always appreciates feedback in terms of other things that are keeping you folks as business owners up at night, in terms of other programs and topics that we can offer, whether it be around, this crisis we are all in, or, talking about the future topics that you might want some information on. I will tell you that we, as the Chamber, will continue to work with our friends like SBA and SCORE in terms of, programming in the future to offer. It is so important as people are starting businesses that they take advantage of resources like these. I was talking with Julio before the call, saying how important it is to start off right as a business. Have your business plan, have that relationship with the banker, because as we all sit here now today, this is why it's so important to make sure all of your T's are crossed and I's dotted.
Okay, so I do have two questions. Maybe Roseanne, you might be able to answer them. So one of the questions is around the PPP. So they have an LLC with 200 employees, but they're all contractors. So technically there's no actual employees, but will the PPP allow them to actually take advantage of that program?
Well, and that is something that I'm actually, I think we would be best to defer to Julio on that. There are so many different criteria, different areas where folks are eligible, where they may not be eligible. So I don't want to provide any misinformation. certainly. So we should leave that for Julio.
Okay. Here's one for you. How has the chamber pivoted to the BAH and events to an online-only community?
Well, we have really, these first few weeks have been focusing on the information and getting information out to our members and to the community. But we will certainly be looking at virtual networking events. I am part of a nationwide chamber group, and there are a lot of organizations that are doing that. So you can certainly look forward to some virtual networking coming soon. So get your Zoom ready. But that human interaction is so important for relationship building and just connecting personally. I will say, just while I have the opportunity, this is our insane event season, and that being said, our major events have been canceled or postponed, which is certainly causing a bit of a strain here in terms of revenue, but we are forging ahead. We do have some new dates to announce. Our golf tournament has been moved from June 17th to August 5th. And our annual dinner and awards that was going to be at the end of April will be held on September 3rd. And as everyone knows, the Daffodil Festival was canceled, and we coordinate the Business Expo. I really do hope when the smoke clears that we will be able to plan some sort of community expo type event, possibly in the summer. But it's very unpredictable right now when we will be able to hold large gatherings and events again. So, but we are, all of those things are on the agenda, and we're working on all of that.
All right, thank you. It looks like a lot of the questions are for Julio, and he just did actually drop out, and so I'm hoping that he is calling back in to be able to answer the questions, because a lot of these questions are around the federal programs, of course.
Absolutely, he is a great resource. I'm sure he's just trying to get back into the system.
I'm just going to
Another thing I can attest to, everybody's saying we are all in this together, and that is true. That is true. This has impacted every type of business, and I have been very worried and concerned about all of our members. We are very close with our members, and often we describe ourselves and our relationship as a family. So it's been very difficult, because we know what we're all going through together. That being said, we as the chamber are finding ourselves, we're always lobbying and advocating and for our member businesses, whatever industry you are in, but we are now advocating for ourselves because that chambers of commerce are not included in much of these relief funding packages. So we're working on a lot of that as well, getting always in contact and writing letters to our congressmen and other elected officials.
Okay. There is a question here, and I know we were talking about this with Julio earlier on before everyone joined, just about the length it's taking for some of these banks to be able to get to the applications and to get the loan monies out. Obviously when Julio comes back, we'll readdress this, but I think the message there was that, these banks got hit with a lot of applicants. They had to quickly pivot and try to take these applicants, but do it in a way that is accurate and correct. So, that takes a little bit of time. And so, of course, they're trying to do their best right now to go through everything.
Yes, and every every financial institution is different as well. You know, these programs come out, but you know, each institution has to have their own form or application or process that that they need to create on their end to get these programs going. And it is pretty remarkable that things have been able to get ramped up so quickly in the grand scheme of things.
Okay. I am actually going to try to call him because I'm not seeing that he's coming back on the line. Hold on just a second.
Okie doke.
All right, so it looks like his internet went down, but I'm trying to get him the information for the phone. So hold on just a second.
It's awfully windy out there. I have family in Maine. All of my in-laws are up there, and goodness, it appears there was a bit of a snowstorm up there over last night, and in addition to them, you know, going through this crisis now, a lot of them, you know, there's snow on the ground and no power and no internet.
Let's see.
Wouldn't want to be there.
Okay, we'll just wait a little bit. And Bob, you had an interesting comment, so I'm going to actually unmute your mic if you would like to talk to your experience about what you're seeing with the banks and the applicants.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my wife works for a large regional bank that's based here in Connecticut, and as soon as that SBA plan opened up, they were inundated, 500 applications during the first day, and it kind of stayed that way for the next several days, while they're also working with a mortgage remediation. So I can't speak specifically for any particular bank. I just know that they are all either working from home, or a large percentage are working from home, the folks who are behind the scenes that you don't see at your local branches. And they are also have limited staff at the facilities where they normally keep their offices. So you have a triple-edged sword where a massive amount of applications for both small businesses, large businesses that need help, homeowners who are looking for some sort of a delay on their mortgages, and then the fact that people aren't in their offices, and the systems that have been built for people to work at home are limited. so that they're not meant to have 75% of their population of their employees being working from their own homes, and then security that goes along with that for banking. So just to say that to anybody out there who's looking for relief from a SBA program through a bank, there's going to be some sort of delay, and that's only from my own experience. My wife is we're both home, working from home. She's in my office, and I'm in a separate part of the house with a small desk. So we're all trying to get this done from a distance. So that's the reason I chimed in. Hopefully that helps answer some questions if anyone has it. I can't answer a specific question, but a general question.
Thank you for that, Bob. Anyone else that has a comment? You can raise your hand and or put the comment in the question box. Okay. All right, I am going to.
Wendy, do we have an idea of some of the types of businesses that are represented on the call with us?
Yeah, why don't we do that? Let me unmute everyone and let's see. So if you could just, I'll call names, and if you could just say your business, Bill Allen. Bill, are you there?
I'm sorry, I'm on another call, so I'll have to pass.
Oh, that's fine.
You can come back to me if you like.
That's fine. Bob?
Mailing services. We are in Stratford, Connecticut, and I've been in the Meriden marketplace for 30 plus years.
Okay. Jennifer Lang?
Hi, I have a marketing agency here in Connecticut, and I hire models to do wine and liquor tastings in the bars, restaurants, and liquor stores, which we can't do right now. All events are off, so that's our struggle right now.
Okay, and Joseph?
I have no idea, but I can try to. Because last night when I was.
All right, Joseph. Let's see here, Kathy Platt. Okay. All right, it looks like Julio is back on, but muted. So
that was me.
There we go.
She didn't say so.
Hello, Julio?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Wendy and Rosanne, I lost power here.
Oh, okay.
It just came back on.
All right, so I tell you what,
My apologies.
That's okay. We lost you pretty early on. And what I did was I asked for people to ask questions.
Okay.
So couple of things. So we have a couple of questions, and maybe I'll just give you some of the questions so that as you're talking again, you can maybe answer some of those questions. And then I did want to point out that there's 2 handouts that Julio gave me that are in the handouts area that I will also send out to everyone after this call. But Julio, some of the questions are, you know, the federal grant program, is this a grant or a loan? And when you're talking about the programs, if you can talk about whether it's a loan or a grant, that's one.
Sure.
With the PPP,
what it is?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to run through the questions real quick. With the PPP, a lot of the employees that they have are actually 1099 contractors, and so they were trying to understand if that applied to them. So I think maybe general eligibility for each of the programs as well.
Sure. under the programs that are up and running with SBA, and I got cut off, so I don't know exactly where my voice ended. I had indicated that since March 15, there are about 3 programs that are up and running that you have access to. 2 are with the SBA directly, which would be sba.gov/disaster, and that would be the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And that's up to $2 million, and that can be for permanent working capital. And that's at the rate on that particular loan program is 3.75. When we launched the program back in March 15, that was the original program that we had introduced in the state of Connecticut as being available to the small businesses across the state. Then about 10 days later, we launched the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Program, which allowed the small businesses to apply for an advance up to $10,000. And that's still up and running. So both the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is up to $2 million, is still running, but that's through the SBA's portal, sba.gov/disaster. Then moving forward, you have then this thing that's been popular, everyone's been talking about it, called the Payroll Protection Program, or better known as PPP. And that's what everyone's kind of knowing the program for. That particular program, the way it was created through Congress, the Senate, and the President, is through the banks, but overseen both by Treasury and SBA. So at the moment, that program was launched on Friday. That was just a couple of days before that was approved and signed by the President, as far back as the week on that Friday, the week before. So this program in 5 days had to be rolled out. And just to give you an example, since the beginning of the program, $130 billion has been processed in terms of through all the banks, that representing 500,000 applications through 4,000 lenders, which is amazing. I know most of us are kind of jittery as to, will I have money or will there be money available? Right now, all the banks are up and running in the state of Connecticut, including credit unions. And so the point of that program is for you to reach out to your own bank. And so your bank, wherever your bank is at, if you have a banking relationship, whether it's with People's, United, Bank of America, Webster, or a community bank out there, Chelsea Groton, Liberty Bank, these are the banks that you have to make points of contact with. A lot of these banks are already set up on their website. I would suggest for you to first just go into the bank's website and see if they have within that website the ability for you to really register online for your loan. Now, what do I mean by that loan is that the way the program, and again, Wendy, I know that you had 2 forms that I had sent you. If you could, I don't know if you could open them.
Yes, hold on just a second.
Thank you.
Which one would you like to have opened first?
The one that has the form information, basically, that's kind of a cheat sheet with just information on it.
Okay.
And then afterwards, I'll show you what the actual form looks like.
All right. Now something happened with my screen share.
Well, what it is that the Payroll Protection Program was created by Congress for you to rehire or to continue to pay your employees over a course of 8 weeks. This would go back to February 15th of this year, which is the form on the left. And the purpose of this is to continue paying your employees through the funds that will be made available through your bank up to that 8-week period. For instance, the way the program's set is that you will look at your payroll for last year, 12 months, and you would just divide it by 12. That's your average. That average would then be multiplied by 2.5 times. So that is what you would be looking for to get from this program called the PPP. the bank would work with you. On the right side of these two forms is the basic form that you would be filling out. There's not much that you need to fill out. It's only just the top half of that form you need to fill out, which is your business information. And towards the middle, it asks for what your average monthly payroll. Then you multiply that times 2.5 times and how many employees you had as of the end of the year. And that's really all you're putting in. The other boxes just below are who are the owners of the business. And then the rest of it is just check off boxes that you have to fill in, just federal guideline regulations that they need to know more about, not only information about your business, but certain regulations that you would have to comply with under the program. And that's all you're going to do. Now, what do I need to bring to the bank? Well, along with that sheet, you're going to bring your payroll information. If you have a private company, then just get your company to provide you, or you should have already, because your fiscal year ended. So you should have had your 12/31 year-end payroll information, and then bring that with you to your bank along with that sheet. Now, if the bank is doing this online, then chances are you'll be sending this information online to the bank. They would then review that. All the bank is going to do is verify what you provided them. So the input, basically, the onus is on your side as owner to make sure you're providing the bank with the most accurate information. All they're going to do is just verify that what you provided them meets the program, which is the payroll information. In addition to that, you could also include your rent and your utilities for the same period and have that included. The way the program's drafted, just to make sure that everyone has sufficient money, or rather the program has sufficient money, they will pay for up to, you would be able to, the SBA or this program will forgive up to 25% of your non-payroll expenses. So basically 75% of your payroll and 25% of your non-payroll expenses would then be forgiven. If you don't want to put any expenses and you just want to put in payroll 100%, then you could just do that. Now, what happens is that as of June 30, once June 30 arrives, right after that week, you're supposed to go back and provide to the bank that you have on your payroll the same number of employees and you were paying them during that same period from the proceeds of the loan that you got. If all matches up, then that particular part of that loan would be forgiven. So if I had $25,000 in payroll, and at the end of June 30, I still have $25,000 in payroll, 5 employees, and 5 employees I started, then that basically is what you're going to be providing the bank with. So at the end, the intent was to make you whole in terms of having your payroll covered during these hard times, which what Congress was looking at was 8 weeks. So you basically would be providing to your bank that information. And so what you're seeing on the right is all the information you'll be supplying them at the time you meet with your lender and get that information into them as quickly as possible. Now that program, the PPP program, is up to $10 million. So you could have up to 500 employees. The interest rate on the program is 1%. The program has a 2-year term. So the goal really is to have this as a loan forgiveness after the 8-week period. But if there is a balance remaining after you submit all your paperwork, then the balance of that loan would be 1% with the 2-year commitment from SBA. Now you don't pay into any loan payments for the first 6 months, so you don't have to worry about making any payments on the loan. That is not part of the program. You will then be commencing to make payments on the loan, whatever your remaining balance is, by the way, after 6 months. So again, the formulas for this is to look at your last year's payroll divided by 12 and just plug in that number in there, multiply it by 2.5 times, and number of employees you had at the end of the year with your payroll. So in a short and simple way, that's what it's calculated as. You might want to talk to your lender or your accountant or whoever does your books to make sure you've accounted for everything, so that when you get that information into the bank, it's as accurate as possible. So in short, that's the most popular. I think the attractiveness of this program is the debt forgiveness. The one that is on the SBA's website that has no debt forgiveness feature to it, but that loan is for 30 years. So when you apply for the SBA disaster loan through our SBA portal, you're really asking for a 30-year loan at 3.75 for working capital for up to 30 years. Most people ask me, well, can I do both? The answer is yes. You can apply for the PPP and the economic injury disaster loan. However, you cannot duplicate programs. So if on the SBA's portal, I'm also getting money for payroll, then what you're going to do with the PPP program is transfer over the payroll portion into the PPP, because the PPP is the only one that has the debt forgiveness or the grant. So that's important, because if you just apply for the SBA's portion under the SBA portal, not through the bank, the SBA portal, then really that is a term loan with no debt forgiveness. But if you're going to the bank, then you meet the banker, you provide them with your payroll information and your operating expenses, and you should be able to work with them. Now, the goal in that program is to get that money out as quickly as possible. The banks are committed to turn that money out pretty quickly. So by all means, get on the phone and contact your bank.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions now. One person asked about the PPP and the 1099 employees contractors. So can you claim the contractors as employees with the PPP?
No, you can't. The SBA and the Treasury had made a decision that those employees can apply separately as 1099 contractors. So if you have 3 contractors, but you have employees in your payroll, you got to net out the 1099s and submit your package for your own internal employees.
Okay, so at that point, is the PPP available at all for a person that might be a sole proprietor but uses only contractors as their employees?
Has to take them out. He can apply, or she can apply as a proprietor, just basically on their net income, but they would have to remove the contractors because they themselves can apply. That's the issue. They're basically then they're getting credit on the proprietor side, and they're also getting credit as individuals if they did that.
Okay, and along that same line of questioning, if so, then can someone that works from home use the funds to pay for the mortgage interest of their house and essentially pay for themselves under the PPP?
That's the first time I've heard someone wanting to use their home. Most businesses tend to be self-employed outside of their home. I'd have to find that question as to whether they can include personal expenses.
Okay. All right. And then I'll send that answer over as soon as you have it for me. And then the question, so really around the grant versus loan, it sounds like there's no grants per se at this point, but more loan forgiveness. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's forgiveness. You meet to the terms of what you took at the beginning and you keep it in place towards the end, and that will be forgiven. If you only brought back half of your employees, then it will be prorated based on what you have brought back. So the lender will work with you there. And by the way, that's still not etched in stone. There is still some advisory updates that will be coming from Treasury. So just keep in mind that there might be changes in terms of how these calculations, or not the calculations, as to what would be included come the end of June 30 when you could submit the paperwork. They might extend it or do something, but please just just keep in tune to any changes when it comes to how you manage your employees at the end of the 8-week period.
Okay, and then there's a couple of questions. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, I think it's the EIDL as well as the PPP and how long that process is taking to hear back that they've been approved.
Yeah, the EIDL program, that's your traditional disaster loan program that I had mentioned earlier, is up to $2 million, and that's capped at 3.75. Also, the non-for-profits can apply for that, and that's at 2.75% for them. And that's more in line for working capital. They will include payroll. The SBA will look at your information and determine how much money you will need to carry your business for a couple of months. And so you can take advantage of that program. There is no debt forgiveness or grant feature to that program. So that's a straight term loan for 30 years. And then, excuse me, and then what happened is that then you had Congress introduce the PPP. And so what happened is now you cannot overlap same programs, but for the same purposes where the EIDL program could provide you payroll coverage, the PPP can, but under Congress's graces, there is that forgiveness. So what would happen, you can't replicate the loan for the same purpose. You would then have to either pay down the payroll through the PPP, which then you would have two loans. And then whatever remained that is not part of payroll under the EIDL program, that would then continue as a term loan.
Okay, and for the PPP program, is there some way to submit this online, or do they have to go to the bank in person?
Most of the big banks are online. The smaller banks, call them. Some of them are. You just have to first, you could either call them or just go online and see what they have.
Okay, but they do have to go through the bank and not through the SBA. Is that true?
Correct. What we're doing right now is really working with the banks, answering and helping them make sure that they're up and running to service you. Really, that's what now since Monday, that's all we've been doing, is really trying to get the banks up to speed in the program so that they could work with all the businesses.
Okay, and then what if a company had an SBA loan already before this? Is there any chance or anything available to them to take advantage of the lower interest rates right now?
There is if you have an existing SBA loan, you need to go to your bank. There is a 3 to 6 month moratorium on it. So go to your bank and talk to them. They have a lot of latitude. So that's their decision with you. So if you have an existing SBA, oh, and by the way, this the disaster loans are not, they don't impact your regular SBA loan. So you could right now be going through our SBA loan program, and we're not looking at to what you're presently having under your existing SBA. But if you do have an SBA loan, please go to your lender, and they should be looking to work with you with deferment on that loan.
Okay. So you're recommending going to the lender first rather than doing anything with the SBA applications at that point for someone that already has an SBA loan?
Right. Well, the SBA loan has nothing to do with any of either the EIDL or the PPP. Okay. That's running on its own, and so all they have to do, really, they look at it this way: they just have to contact the bank for their own existing SBA loan to see if they to get a deferment, so that they don't have to make any payments for the next 3 to 6 months. At the same time, they could apply for the PPP loan that has nothing to do with the existing SBA loan. Whether they need $100,000 or $200,000 or $50,000, that's going to be running through the SBA's. The banks are going to be processing that net of whatever you have with the SBA loan.
Okay, and there's been a couple of questions around the $10,000 grant. Have you heard of a $10,000 grant and that approval process?
It's referred to as an advance. So it's an advance up to $10,000. So anyone that owns a business basically is going to go to sba.gov/disaster and start looking for the advanced economic injury disaster loan. and fill out the couple of information that it's needed. Is basically is asking for your revenue, information on the business, any cost of goods sold, and number of employees. That's all it's asking. Once you complete that, you just submit it. You'll be getting a confirmation number, and within a few days, you should be getting some advance from the SBA. Now, if it's under the EIDL program, and that's what you're applying for, that advance would not be included in your loan. But if it's going into your PPP, you might have duplication of what that program is for, and they might net and so say you got 50,000, you might have 40,000 plus the 10 through the advance on the PPP, but on the EIDL, it would be considered as an advance without having to pay it back.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's all of the questions at this point. If there's any other questions, I'm going to see one more time in the question area. Yep, that looks like that is all of the questions. Let me just go to the next slide, which is the resources screen. And we have all of the links to the different resources. Rosanne, do you want to talk about the Connecticut business resources on the state site? Okay, we might have lost Rosanne. Oh yeah, she's on mute. All right, and then Julio, for the U.S. Treasury, we have the U.S. Treasury links on there, as well as the SBA loan funding programs for the coronavirus relief. Is there anything else before we leave that you would like to say to everyone?
Sure, please take advantage of any of these programs, specifically the PPP program. Work with your bank. Call them, set up an appointment, or they're doing it over the phone. That's it's so important. We need your businesses up and running, getting the employees back up and to work. That's the goal. So that during the next 8 weeks, that payroll technically will be covered by the federal government to make your businesses whole after the 8-week period.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that actually, I would like to part with, we started this by having a survey. A part of that survey was working with the Workforce Alliance organization to get information about companies that have either laid off or furloughed their employees. I know a great concern for people that have done that is actually getting those employees back when everything starts up again. So if you, after this is over, I'm going to send out some information, the handouts from today, as well as I'll link back to that survey. So if you haven't had a chance to fill out the survey, please do. There's a part of that survey where you can answer that you would like to talk to somebody from the Workforce Alliance. And with that, I thank you for sticking with us. This is somewhat of the new normal now, where we're all trying to do everything virtually online, and unfortunately that's causing a lot of bandwidth problems. So thank you for sticking with us to the end, and I hope that you join other of the webinar series this month. Thank you so much.
Más en términos de región en este momento, y como decimos, un comienzo también en términos de